Hi, everybody, and welcome to the show. It is Wednesday, May the 7th. I'm Johnny Kane with SportsCaster.com, and this is Open Mic. Now, this program is led by student broadcasters navigating their way in sports broadcasting. We highlight some of the big stories happening all around the great state of Michigan. And tonight, a really good show for you. Our guests include Matt Helbig, founder of Big River Race Management. The I Ran the D 5K returns to Detroit later this month, one of the premier road races in our city. All four major professional sports teams are involved. We'll discuss what goes into putting on a race of this size and how Detroit benefits as a whole by having it. We'll also talk to Brooke Fletcher, a rising sideline reporter who you've likely seen covering Michigan and Michigan State football on Big Ten Network. She's in her first season covering the Chicago White Sox with the Chicago Sports Network. And Brooke got her start working in TV right here covering the Tigers and Pistons on Bally Sports. Really good perspective about working in Major League Baseball as the daughter of former big leaguer and Detroit Tiger middle infielder Scott Fletcher. Justin Kelly, strength and conditioning coach at Wayne State University, joins the show to talk about everything that goes into getting the most out of collegiate athletes. As you probably figured, the role of a strength coach has evolved over the years as technology and new equipment has evolved as well. How that role differs from sport to sport, really insightful interview with Justin Kelly. And we'll also hear from an athletic director from one of our local universities, Oakland University AD Steve Waterfield, on all that goes into holding one of the most high-profile positions on a college campus. Fascinating look at college athletics as a whole and how the AD role is defined. It's a really good show, and I'm not just saying that. Let's get it started with the more mobile audience. And if you're a runner, you'll dig this. If you've ever thought of participating in a 5K race, which is 3.1 miles, you can do it. The I Ran the D 5K returns to downtown Detroit on Saturday, May 17th. I ran in the inaugural I Ran the D 5K race back in 2017, and it's incredible. The race starts at the Big Tiger just outside of Comerica Park. Then you run around Ford Field, and then you end up on the field inside Comerica Park. Really an incredible race and obviously benefits the city of Detroit in a lot of ways. Cody Stedman is a student at Saline High School. He hopes to one day work in sports broadcasting. And he spoke with Big River Race Management founder Matt Helbig about all things that go into making I Ran the D a success here in Detroit.
Throughout Detroit, many different organizations plan their 5K or even 10K marathons throughout the city of Detroit, Michigan. But we're joined by one of the forefront organizers for the I Ran the D organization, CEO of Big River Race Management, Matt Helbig. Matt, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, Cody, no problem. Thanks for having me.
So to start off, how about you introduce yourself and what your company really does for different marathon runners?
Sure. So yeah, my name is Matt Helbig. I'm a St. Louis native, and my company, Big River Race Management, helps organize and execute 5K and 5K events, basically endurance events. So 5K, 10K, half marathon, full marathons, road races, essentially, from coast to coast. So we do events primarily in the Midwest, and we do some events on the East Coast for the most part.
So how did you get into the world of race management?
I was a runner in high school and ran in college. I was a Division II athlete running at Truman State University. And when I got done with undergrad, I wanted to stay in the sport, so I thought I'd be a coach and went to graduate school in the Big 12 and was a coach at Iowa State University and started helping out with. We hosted cross country meets and track meets there, and it always kind of fascinated me, kind of all the behind the scenes things that were taking place. And then fast forward a few years, I actually got into the industry by opening some running stores in St. Louis to begin with. And pretty much right after we opened the running stores, we started getting phone calls from local 5Ks, 10Ks, cross-country race organizers asking if we could help with managing their events. Could we sponsor the event? Could we provide the timing for those events and the organization? And at that time, we kind of looked at the race management side of things as a way to drive foot traffic and business into our retail stores. So we started kind of a side hustle doing small 5Ks and working with some of the local high schools for their cross country meets. And we'd host the packet pickups at our stores where people would come in before the events and pick up their race bibs or their T-shirts, and then they'd spend a few bucks at the store. So it was always kind of a side hustle for quite a few years. And then as we kind of got better at it and invested in some different new technologies at the time, we kind of started growing and growing and growing, and all of a sudden we had this whole other business that we were operating alongside our retail stores. And after a few years, I was able to kind of get out of the retail. I sold the retail stores and started focusing 100% on the event management and race management side of things. And so, yeah, here we are now. We've got 3 offices around the country. We produce and manage about 450 events a year, and it's just a ton of fun to be still be in the sport, doing something that I love to do, and yeah, that's kind of my backstory.
Would you still prefer managing like the small local 5Ks, or do you prefer managing the large amount of national events that you cover across the country?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's pros and cons to both types of those events. The smaller ones are a little easier to produce, obviously, but there's a lot more maybe kind of fulfillment. Doing a 5K like in your local community. The big ones, obviously, there's a little bit more adrenaline, a little more excitement around like the big like 5 and 10,000 person events. So those obviously they'll take a heck of a lot more work and effort to put on, and are a little bit more stressful too, if you can imagine. So I think it kind of depends on what you're kind of looking for in terms of which are more fun to do.
Now, next up for you, what's one part of a race day that most people don't realize takes a ton of work behind the scenes, whether that be setting up all of the waters and drinks for everyone, or just getting everyone having tickets and ready to begin?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's a lot of different aspects that go into producing a large road race. For I Ran the D, for instance, is one of our signature events coming up here in a few weeks here in Detroit. The permitting is quite a grueling process, getting through all the different departments in the city. That's one of the first challenges that you run into. And then I'd say that probably the biggest thing that people don't necessarily realize is the amount of work and effort that goes into closing down 3.1 miles of city streets. The coordination with the Detroit Police Department. We hire a third party barricade company to come out. They drop barricades and cones along the course to ensure that motorists can't enter the course. Making sure that we have all the intersections listed with the correct number of volunteers and police and safety personnel. So that's another big lift of the event, and that's actually probably the most expensive part of putting on an event. A lot of folks probably think that like the medal and the T-shirt that you get when you sign up is the most expensive aspect of putting on a road race, but it's actually the safety and security is far and away the biggest expense. So when you're paying 30, 40, $50 for that race entry, a good chunk of that is going towards making sure that the race is safe. And that's something that as somebody who participates in road races, they probably don't think about that aspect of the event like they do some of the other aspects that are more visible. But yeah, that safety aspect is a big challenge. And then of course, ordering 6,000 T-shirts in the right sizes and having the right amount of medals and not having too many left over, but just enough at the finish line to make sure everybody gets one. It's you're kind of fortune telling and predicting, trying to guess how many people you're going to get. I mean, we have a pretty good idea of how many people are going to sign up in the weeks and the months leading into the race, but depending on how your marketing and your advertising and your promotions are going, sometimes maybe you have a big jump at the end, sometimes maybe you don't get as many, and so it's always a challenge, always a challenge.
So, in other words, the organization keeps you busy.
Yeah, it's one day, it's one day, it's even just, 3 or 4 hours of when we all kinda come together, but yeah, I mean, it's months and months of planning and tons of hours. I mean, we're gonna put in hundreds, if not thousands of hours of manpower and of phone calls and emails and follow-ups and vendor connections and all those things, so there's a heck of a lot that goes into it, more than most people would probably, expect.
Now, let's talk a little bit more on the local side for us here in Detroit. We know that the I Ran the D event is coming up, and with your business managing most of it, how would most of those different aspects on all sides really affect the runners in this race?
Yeah, I mean, the I Ran the D event is one of the most fun events that we put on our calendar. And it's one of the highlights on the Detroit racing calendar. It's really one of the only events, throughout the entire year that has all four pro sports teams come together. So you got the Tigers, the Pistons, the Lions, and the Red Wings all collaborating together to bring the health and fitness community together, the sports community together. The fan bases from all four of those teams come together to celebrate this event. And it's just so much fun to watch everybody come out and bring the enthusiasm and the energy and, running 3.1 miles on the streets of Detroit on a spring morning. It's just, there's nothing like it.
How do you think other communities, besides Detroit, since this is a national organization, how do you believe that uh, different communities would be affected by the races that you organize?
Yeah, I mean, each race has its own, its own way of connecting with its community. In Detroit here, the I Ran the D 5K benefits local nonprofits. So last year, Chad Tuff, um, which is an organization that raises funds for child brain tumor cancer research, they've been our one of our main beneficiaries the last few years. Last year, we raised over $70,000 for that organization. We've also partnered with the Detroit Sports Commission, who do some amazing things for youth sports here in the community, and we're excited to have them be a part of the event this year as well. So, that's how this particular event touches the community here in Detroit. Other events that we work with around the country have different charitable aspects, and do different things for their communities. But that's one of the beautiful things about endurance sports and road races like this is there's always something that gives back to the community. Whether it's a charity, whether it's a nonprofit organization that's doing great things in their community. The bulk of these events that you're going to see that come through the community that you can run on almost a weekly basis now in almost every community around the country are going to have some charitable component to it that's just doing great things in the community. So runners and walkers are very generous people, and these events are a great way to not only give back to your community, but to gives you some fitness goals and a reason to get out and stay healthy and active and getting outside.
Yeah, I completely agree. And so, if you're just tuning in, we're talking with Matt Helbig, CEO of Big River Race Management, one of the managers for the I Ran the D race later in the next few months. Now, I know you mentioned the Detroit Sports Commission, who has played a pivotal role in enhancing the local economy of Metro Detroit, even helping the record breaking 2024 NFL draft hosted in Detroit, Michigan, which broke a ton of records even for Metro Detroit. Now, moving along, what other organizations help you and other races that you hold across the country?
Sure. I mean, some examples that kind of come to mind. The Girls on the Run organization. That is a national organization that helps girls between the ages of 8 and 13 learn life lessons and train for a 5K. We work with a number of those chapters throughout the Midwest and help them execute their 5Ks, which is their culminating experience after a 10-week training session where they run. They meet twice a week where they run, and then they learn some different life lessons that help them grow up to be strong, amazing women. And so that's one example. We work with nonprofit organizations like zoos, art museums, really, any, lots and lots of different types of nonprofits and charities put on 5Ks as fundraisers, be it their the primary fundraiser or just a way to raise some funds for specific projects that they're working on. So, there's also not-for-profits in a lot of markets that put on 5Ks and put on endurance events. That's their primary function, and then they give back to the community in a number of different ways by supporting youth running organizations, youth sports initiatives, and a whole plethora of other charitable components.
So one last question I do have for you today is, what advice would you give someone who wants to work in sports or fitness or even event planning someday, that since you have most of the experience for this, what kind of advice would you give for an angle like this?
Sure. I mean, I would say first, find something that you're passionate about. So I was passionate about running, and I found my way into the running industry. But every type of sport has its own industry. The basketball industry, the volleyball, gymnastics. Whatever you're passionate about. Look into that. Look into the business side of it. And then after that, I would say find some of the organizations or the companies around the country that are big in those spaces, and find a way to get on there as an intern, as an entry level person, as a volunteer. Really, I mean, in this particular sport or this particular industry, there's tons of volunteer opportunities within the road race industry, and go out and do some events, see if it's something that you enjoy, and then from there, find your way in there. There's lots of people that are going to be willing to bring you in and show you the ropes, and getting valuable experience that then will kind of help you find a job that actually pays money. But yeah, don't be afraid to go out and ask questions and poke your way in, and you have to. Sometimes it's competitive as well. Sometimes you kind of get into some of those industries, so you're going to have to do some work.
The I Ran the D 5K is coming up on Saturday, May the 17th. More than $200,000 have been raised for the Chad Tuff Foundation, which raises money for children with brain tumors. It is a worthy cause. For more information, go to runsignup.com and search I Ran the D. When we come back, you ever wonder what it's like working as a sideline reporter for a Major League Baseball team? Brooke Fletcher of the rival Chicago White Sox joins the show next.